Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We wanted to make sure that, I know there's a number of different people here, and some of you have gotten an email of the press release, some of you had not, so we wanted to make sure we had a hard copy in order to give everyone one of those. My name is Vern Pearson. I am the elected district attorney in El Dorado County, a couple hundred miles from here, and I want to thank you for being here today. What's happening today and what's happened over the last week and a day, is essentially the culmination of the last really 10 months, a reinvestigation that's taken place into the case that should be referred to properly as the American Nightmare case. And I want to say right up front, and I would encourage all of you that are here as well as your editors to please stop using the Gone Girl term to refer to this case. That is a derogatory term that never should have been given to this case or this investigation. It's based upon a movie. It's premised on the fact of people lying about a crime. That never happened in this case, and I would strongly encourage you to call it what it actually is. This is a case that's properly characterized as the American Nightmare. People in their ultimate sanctuary, alone in their home, being woken up in the middle of the night by an intruder who is exceptionally intelligent, exceptionally well educated, and exceptionally practiced in the art of sneaking into people's houses and terrorizing them. So again, I would encourage you to refer to it that way, and please stop the using of the Gone Girl terminology. As you all know, last week charges were filed in Santa Clara County. Yesterday, additional charges for a home invasion took place in Contra Costa County. The reason why we're here today, as I said about 10 months ago, Chief Nick Borges, who had met with Denise and Aaron and Misty Caruso, and I didn't pronounce it right, did I? They were, after 9 years, persistent that there was more to this case, that Mr. Matt Mueller had committed more crimes, and perhaps he worked with others in the commission of those crimes. As a result of their persistence, and I'm going to let the chief speak in just a moment, but the chief initiated essentially a letter writing effort to Mr. Mueller, seeking to engage him and elicit additional information. But because of his efforts, there was a presentation in March of last year that I attended, as well as one in May of last year up in South Lake Tahoe, that Denise, Aaron, and Misty and Chief Borges also all spoke at. And they spoke about the problems and the methodologies and the training that we have trained, the way we have trained detectives over the last 50 years. A type of training where they're taught to use pseudoscience in deception detection, and then after employing these techniques, they would make a determination on whether or not they believe somebody to be telling the truth. In this case, Aaron was described as not behaving like a victim should have behaved. They were wrong, and everything that happened as a result of that is the unfortunate consequence of that. We now know that far back as when he was 16 years old, that Mueller had committed his first kidnapping and sexual assault. That was in 1993. That case is still under investigation, so we will not comment any further on it. The two cases that were charged, 2009 cases in Santa Clara County, one in Palo Alto, the other one in Mountain View. The home invasion, ultimately kidnapping, sexual assault, and then release that Denise and Aaron underwent in mid to late March of 2015. And then about approximately 2 weeks later, up until recently, unreported home invasion taking place in Contra Costa County which was the subject of the charges that were filed yesterday. Finally, the home invasion taking place in Dublin that is well documented, wherein Lieutenant Misty Caruso solved the original case out of Vallejo. So that's the overview of and framing of this. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Borges.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being here in Seaside. I just want to reemphasize something that DA Pearson just said. When we refer to Denise and Aaron, this is not the Gone Girl case. That is offensive, and we should not be saying that from a law enforcement perspective or from the media. So we ask that this be called the American Nightmare at best. I want to start out by really thanking Misty. Misty has been a #1 supporter to Denise and Aaron, and if it had not been for Misty's efforts early on in 2015, they may have not ever been exonerated. And I think with some of the new announcements that you guys have seen in the past week or so, they are definitely exonerated. They already were, but now they're even more so exonerated. And who would have thought that their story would lead them not only to be exonerated, but to actually be heroes? I played a very small role here, but at the end of the day, it was Denise and Aaron that lit the flame that started so many things in motion. They wanted answers in their case, and things are being looked at again. The message that we really have is this is what law enforcement and survivors working together looks like. This is what this looks like. I encourage this all up and down the United States of America. Listening, working with victims and survivors, following evidence. This is not to make anyone look bad. This is a positive day for everyone. I want to thank DA Vern Pearson for his involvement. He's been incredible in working with them and working with others to try to find justice and answers and resolution. So with that, I'd like to pass this over to Misty and have her say a few words. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to thank everybody for being here today, and I am really excited that justice will be served to those victims, and it does take a collaborative effort to work with agencies and the justice system to make sure that violent criminals never set foot on our streets again, and we can protect our communities. I was trying not to get emotional today, so thank you, Chief. I don't have much else to say except victim awareness is real. I implore everybody to be kinder, to make sure that the information that we are putting out there is correct, that mistakes don't get made again like this. We can be a better society by just doing the right thing all of the time, and I just implore everybody to do the same thing. So with that, I'm going to give it over to Denise and Aaron.
Where do you begin? I think the most important thing today is with these new charges, these new cases, is recognizing the significance of the timing of it. Mueller was 16 years old when he attacked his first victims. And he was 38 years old by the time he got to us. That's 2 decades of this mindset that he was living in. By the time our case came about, they found storage units full of equipment to help him facilitate terrorizing people. It's something that he's crafted and perfected over a long period of time. And then now to find out, 2 weeks after our kidnapping, he attacked again. And that was 2 days in captivity of him telling me he was remorseful, that I don't deserve this, that I'm going to be suffering from this for a long time to come. Before he released me from the car, he said, seeing what this did to you has changed me. I'm done. I'm never doing this again. And just 2 weeks later, he attacked another family. And then weeks after that, attacked another family. This man had all the serial markers of He had all the markers of a serial predator. And it's unfortunate that it's taken this long to be able to really give some better clarity and hopefully some sense of peace to these other victims. I really believe that this is just the tip of the iceberg and that there's probably more to be learned and found, which is why, again, we are so grateful to have found a team in law enforcement who respects us, who values us as victims, and is willing to work with us and collaborate with us. We're hoping that this can be a really positive example of this is how policing can be, this is how investigations can be handled, and we're really hoping that there can be a shift in this in the future. Can be and should be a really good learning opportunity.
That covers it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Sure. Well, we'll answer a few. We'll attempt to answer a few questions at this point. I do think I'm going to add to my original comments. I want to.
Do you want to burn?
All right, sorry. All right, let me slide over. Thank you. So, it really, to echo some of what's been said, all too often when something like this happens, when, what are so obviously mistakes that took place in the initial days of the investigation after the home invasion and the abduction, to focus on the negative. But the truth is, this is much more about positive changes in the way law enforcement training is now done here in the state of California in terms of interviewing. Positive changes in and positive work from the standpoint of multitude of law enforcement people. If the press release at the very end, there's a listing of all the different agencies who contributed to this. I can tell you, despite everything that's happened, my working with the FBI over the last several months, up to and including a trip with a team down to Tucson to do an actual full comprehensive interview of Mr. Mueller with an interviewer who is probably one of the 2 or 3 best interviewers in the entire world, participating in that, and the information that came out of it, including fast forward to frankly a somewhat crazy story where one of my lieutenant, who's standing back here, calls a detective from Contra Costa and tells him a story about a guy hiking 2 miles carrying a ladder so he can climb in the window in the middle of the night. And the detectives from Contra Costa stopped what they were doing and hunted around in the middle of the night until they found the location of the ladder, which is it is a very unusual, frankly crazy set of facts in this. But investigations lead us where they do, and the truth of it is, it's been alluded to, when law enforcement is open-minded, follow the evidence that's presented, positive things can happen. Do we know today that we know, the total of 6 cases that I mentioned to, that's the sum total of the crimes that Mueller has committed? I frankly, honestly doubt it, but I don't know definitively. I know those are the ones that we know at this point. So with that, we're happy to answer a few questions.
Can you tell us the case in 1993, what county that was, and it was not something that he admitted to while in prison?
We cannot tell you any specific details about that case because the investigation's ongoing. It is something that was discussed with him at length and independently investigated and verified that did in fact occur.
I have a question for Denise and Aaron. Behind you it says trust police. What made you take that leap to trust this police department and find ourselves where we are today?
Well, Chief Borges, after the American Nightmare series came out, he sent us a message on Instagram through the police department. And I mean, at first I was just shocked to see Seaside Police Department. I'm like, oh God, what is this going to be? But he just said, I want you to know that there's people in law enforcement who believe in you, who are standing with you, that we don't think that this is acceptable, how this was handled. We want to support you. And, he's a chief of police in charge of potentially making changes. And he already has made a ton of changes, which is to his credit. And then he offered, I feel like this could be a really good learning opportunity for law enforcement. We'd love to host for you to come and speak to a group of officers, and we jumped on the opportunity because that's something that we've always wanted to do, is to work with law enforcement, and we've always felt kind of ostracized and treated as something difficult and to deal with. And so it was really, words can't describe what it feels like to feel supported in that way.
I think it's also important he followed up with action, right? So all three of these people followed up with action, and they have gone above and beyond what they need to do, and that brings trust. Right. And as Denise said, we're internally grateful to meet them and to work with them, and that changes your perspective, because we know that our experience, although not unique, other people have experienced that, is not singular. So there are other options out there, and it's taken us time, but we now have got there.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us what it was like for you, just being accused and then later to be, exonerated, supported? Just what was it like in the beginning part?
It's indescribable what it's like in the beginning. You are terrorized, going through the worst experience of your life, and the people you go to for help turn on you, and then society turns on you, and social media turns on you, and you have nowhere to go. And if it wasn't for us together, and it wasn't for our family and friends, I don't know where we'd be.
And our attorneys.
And our attorneys.
Believed in us, yeah.
So hopefully people don't understand what it's like. And to get out of that hole, is to have the narrative change is almost impossible. It's taken us years of writing a book, doing Netflix series, countless articles, and people still question, because once that kind of verbal tattoos on you, it's almost impossible to get rid of it. But we'll keep trying.
Does your mind go there where you think, gosh, could have our crimes have been committed? He was a suspect in the 2009 crimes. You mentioned he was 16 years old. Does your mind go there, and you try not to think about that, thinking this couldn't have happened to us had there been maybe stronger investigations?
Ooh. I guess your mind wanders of all the possibilities of everything with something like this, something so unbelievable and extreme and traumatizing. And at the same time, I know that there's a lot that's changed and how policing and investigations are done in the past 2 decades or more. I don't know the specifics of it, so I don't know.
As far as our 2015 case, I don't know if it could have been prevented. I can tell you, if investigators use the interviewing techniques that DA Pearson is advocating for, then I think our case would have been solved. And don't forget that the kidnappers were emailing me, calling my phone, while the police were telling me I had murdered Denise. And instead of tracking those phone calls, instead of following where the evidence led, they decided to turn my phone airplane mode. And so I'm confident the 2 other cases after ours should have been prevented, would have been prevented, if they had gone the route of science-based interviewing techniques that DA Pearson is advocating for.
This may be more of a question for the DA or for the chief, but now that we're up to 6 cases, is there anything you can say about the victims and why Matthew Mueller chose the victims that he did?
Well, I will say that, and I don't want to speak for the victims, obviously, or in particular, Denise and Aaron, but all the other ones. This individual, as I said, he's exceptionally bright. He is very well educated. He was a Harvard-trained lawyer. He's incredibly manipulative and very adept at terrorizing people. It's inescapable that that's what he did, was to pre-plan these attacks. We now know and I don't want to get into all the specific details, but I did discuss this with Denise and Aaron. The time when their home invasion took place and kidnapping took place was at least the fourth time he had been in that residence. In other words, he had gone in on prior occasions as part of his planning and preparation for what it was he was going to do. When I told them about that, I think they both suspected that was the case because he knew too much. I think that is what we have seen in the other cases that he was involved in, that he took weeks, if not months, to plan the home invasions that he would do. He knew intimate details about the families that lived there, such that he could employ those to terrorize them, to convince them that he had other people working with him, to convince that those other family members that were not present were in danger should they not cooperate with what it is that he was telling them. And hence the case that's now been charged in San Ramon. I frankly feel for those people. They were terrorized to the extent that they did not report it to law enforcement.
Chief, can you talk more about the letter writing, how that got started, and what was in your mind when you started going down that road?
Well, in terms of the letters, really it was a group effort with Misty, Denise, Aaron, and I, and it started off with a letter to the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Northern District. I haven't heard back from him yet. Hopefully I will. It was early last year, I sent off a letter just requesting what they requested. I really acted on their behalf. They gave me permission to do everything I've done, and I really just want to focus on, someone mentioned this earlier, but the trust that they put into law enforcement. Everything they have gone through, to me, it's just so admirable that they had the character and the integrity to still put trust into law enforcement. That's an opportunity that I hope all of us in law enforcement don't miss. This is an opportunity to build from this. They trusted me to move forward with it, and they're incredibly smart. When we talk about people who are incredibly smart, again, everything that I did, every move that I made was at their direction, through their permission, their authority, and they're both very brilliant. So it's a great team. And yeah, the letters, we never expected that it would lead to a lot of what it has with these new announcements. But like we say, you'll never know what's under a rock if you don't turn it. And we started flipping rocks.
How'd you come up with the idea to do that?
The idea?
Yeah.
Well, Misty and I had tossed around the idea of maybe going to visit Mr. Mueller in prison. Well, we just felt, just using common sense, that it might be more reasonable to reach out to him first to see if he's even willing to communicate. And that's really where that started.
And was he willing to do that without his attorney?
What's that?
Was he willing to talk to you without his attorney?
He was, and I don't think he had an attorney representing him. He had already been sentenced to prison at the time. There was no fresh charges at that time.
I think most of us that are here are familiar with what went wrong in Aaron and Denise's case, and obviously the family that didn't come forward for the reasons they didn't come forward. That's understandable that police wouldn't have known about that. What is your sense of what went wrong in the other cases and why it took 15 or so years to get to this point?
Well, I guess the short answer is I don't know. But what I can say is when you have somebody like Aaron who's young, fit, who even he, in this case, it took him hours to call law enforcement because of the fear, the cameras, the tape, the information, the access, the knowledge. He has a brother that's in the FBI, and his brother encouraged him. His brother's another unsung hero, encouraged him to call 911 to get the ball moving. But you have to ask yourself, if you have somebody like Aaron with his background and his family connections who was, I would say, terrified to reach out to law enforcement, it's very reasonable to understand why there are victims that didn't until recently come forward to law enforcement, and there could be more.
I guess maybe I mean the Palo Alto case or the Mountain View case, so where law enforcement did know, and I understand you're not with those departments, but what went wrong with the police investigations in those cases, if you have a sense of what went wrong?
I didn't look into the investigations that happened previously, but I'll speak to the investigators I dealt with and the police chiefs I dealt with directly after receiving some information and letters. The Palo Alto Police Chief and the Mountain View Chief were incredible to work with. They immediately formed a team who made contact with me, and I worked with them for months on end, and they followed up. And again, this response from law enforcement is as a result of this team right here. So, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I guess just another piece of the letter writing aspect of it. When we had come here to do the training, we went to lunch with Chief Borges, and he had mentioned, there's clearly some unanswered questions here. Like, would you mind if I reach out to Mueller? Months before that, Aaron and I were looking into how we could potentially speak to Mueller directly ourselves, because we knew that there were things that just weren't followed up on, and we felt like perhaps in his own way he felt connected or bonded to us. Maybe he would open up to us. But at the same time, there's a lot of risk to that, and we didn't have a lot of support in trying to figure out the steps that we needed to take to do that safely. So then when Chief Borges presented that, it was an opportunity to see potentially what Mueller would have to say, but with some barrier of protection. And that's something, and kind of just going back to 2015, not having people in law enforcement that we trusted. It was the same investigators on the case, the same AUSA who was threatening us with prosecution, who stayed on the case after Mueller was caught, and then we immediately had to work with them. And so there was, again, just a lot, not to go to the negative, that that could have been different. But again, it was just really nice to have the opportunity to be with someone in law enforcement who's like, hey, I could work with you and for you. So.
Denise, what would you say to you? Has the Vallejo Police Department ever personally apologized to you? And if not, what are your thoughts about that? And what is your message to survivors who, even to this day, may go to police and feel that they're not believed?
Well, for survivors, I mean, it's hard, because you go to the police and if they don't believe you, what can you do, right? Except to continue to use your voice. You can't make them do anything that they're not willing to do. So if you're in that situation, just know you should always trust yourself, always believe in yourself, even if you can't change what other people do or what other people say. But it's really easy to go into self-blame and self-doubt and shame, and it's just try to get support from wherever you can close to you, and know that you can always trust in yourself. I forget the first question.
Has the Vallejo Police Department ever personally apologized to you, and what are your thoughts?
Personally, no. And at this point, an apology doesn't matter. Like Aaron said earlier, actions are what matters, and that's what we want to see, changes.
Denise, for a long time you had said that you believed Matthew Mueller did not act alone.
Correct.
Where do you and Aaron stand on that today?
Well, we're, again, grateful that a new team is looking at it and reinvestigating and exploring things that we know were never explored. There's we wrote a book about it. There's reasons why we believe that, and that aren't explained quite yet. So I think we'll have to wait and see.
You said that you thought about meeting him. What would you say to him if you did make that move?
I mean, honestly, we didn't think of expectations other than let's just see if we can have this opportunity and see what happens. And it could be a disaster, but we wanted to be able to know that we had that opportunity and that choice.
Is that something that you're still considering?
Well, in light of all the new cases and charges, we'll see. Because right now we need to focus on him being sentenced and hopefully getting that life in prison.
We'll take just a couple more questions. Just a couple more.
Have you talked to the victims in the not new cases, but new charges?
I've spoken to one when she told me that the DA was going to press charges, and I'll share is she just said, I didn't know how much I needed this. So, yeah, you can never speak to what other victims need. Everyone has their own individual way of healing. So, we don't want to push our expectations onto others, but hopefully for the victims, they can have some sense of peace or, again, some understanding, some clarity, and to know that this man is in prison and hopefully facing life.
With everything that you've gone through, did you ever think there were did you ever think there were more victims?
Oh, yeah. And in captivity, Mueller told me that he had done this before, that he had threatened victims, that he had ways of tracking their phones and seeing, even if they didn't report to police, looking at whether or not they were looking up the police department. I mean, he said he gave a lot of details of how he had done this in the past. So, I mean, all of this was relayed to the investigators at the time. And then obviously there was a lot of similarities to the 2009 cases, and he was the prime suspect in those cases. So, we knew this wasn't a singular case.
Sorry, one more point on that. Mueller had a storage unit full of equipment, a house full of equipment. He's not buying all that to use at one time. So it's clear that he either has done it before or he was planning on doing it again. And that is why we were so adamant. Even after Vallejo police called it a hoax, Denise spoke to him for 2 days because we knew how dangerous this person was. And they decided not to follow up on that. And yes, so that's why we pushed it more, because we know that this man has been practicing, now we know, for decades.
Chief, one more on the communication with Mueller. It must have gone against your basic instincts as a law enforcement officer to trust anything that he said. When did the turning point come that you started believing him? And do you still believe to this day that he's being completely honest with law enforcement?
Well, I wouldn't go as far as to say I believe everything that's been told to me, but I will say that the interactions that I had in writing him I just spoke to him as a human. There was no training or skill or trickery. It was just authentic, who I am, reaching out, being very straightforward, identifying who I was, letting him know I'm not investigating anything. That's really the interaction. Whether or not I believe everything said, I will say I believe some of the things that have led to criminal charges, because I believe that they match the evidence that these agencies have.
Mr. Mueller told you why he had a change of heart in one of his letters. He said, "This is why I'm willing to cooperate with law enforcement now in 2024. So what was that reason?
He did get into that, but I will say, since he has not been sentenced to these cases, I don't want to get into too many details of our communication. Some of that's been made public that are in the court documents, but I don't want to be the source of giving out too much specific information into our interactions.
Can you talk about the prosecution gaining his trust?
One more, I know she's been waiting.
Two-part question.
All right.
For the DA, sorry. Yeah. If you could, sir, two parts. One, any concern about the ability to bring these charges because he didn't have an attorney and he has some mental health issues might just fall apart at all because of those reasons? And the second question, if you could speak to, in the past when he's had other cases like the Dublin home invasion or the rape charges, his time has been served concurrently, or his sentence has been concurrent. How will you make sure that this is sort of not concurrent and he could potentially face life? Those two questions.
Well, the second one first is so that the individual agencies that have jurisdiction over those cases and the courts there will make that final determination in terms of the sentence. But these are out of Santa Clara County as well as Contra Costa, the Costa County. Those are what we would refer to as life-top cases, to where they have the potential for life sentences. And my hope is that all of the various charges ensure that he is never released from custody. As far as his, having spent 2 days with him in as I indicated, with a very talented interviewer, going into details of past crimes that exhaustive details of past crimes that he's taken that he has committed, exploring with him his reasons for why he was telling us what he was telling us. In my view, there's no doubt in terms of his mental status and ability to speak with us. So I'm not concerned about the first one. I'll leave it at that. I want to wrap things up at this point. I want to say once again, unless you guys have any additional comments you want to make, there are the very positive side of this. There is the, I can tell you from my perspective, looking at a case like this, unfortunately, sometimes when you look at a case like this and the circumstances and what Denise and Aaron ran into, and Misty, was some degree of reluctance to reopen a case and basically take the Band-Aid off, to use that expression. Once I got involved and my people were involved, as well as Chief Borges, I contacted the FBI. I spoke with them, and I will tell you they were a very significant partner in this over the last period of time, to the point of sending one of the best interviewers that they have and a team along with him down to Tucson to conduct those interviews. As I indicated, with Contra Costa and the way those detectives went out, the number of different agencies when things have been brought to their attention and saying, hey, there's something out here, we need to follow up on it. I guess what I'm saying at the bottom line is it's really easy to focus and say, go back to like the 2009 case and say, hey, why didn't they do this? When given the opportunity and presented with the additional information, each of the different law enforcement agencies have attempted to go above and beyond and make sure that justice was served. So with that, I would thank you all for being here. We did release the press release. It's out there. If there's some on the side limited questions that you have that we may not have answered, then myself, a few other people from our office will be here and attempt to answer those questions. But with that, I would thank you very much. Back this way.
Thank you. Thank you.